for this conversation because a lot of investors and a lot of audience really like to see the movement of Bumi stocks lately. So they are wondering about the corporate action that might come for Bumi in the coming week or in the coming months. So a lot of investors are curious about the corporate action, what kind of corporate action that can be happen by Bumi. That's why we try to connect them with this Instagram live event. We are wondering about Bumi stocks that have a good volatility lately, and also we want to understand about the fundamental condition for Bumi in this third quarter. Can you tell us about
In the
the
third quarter,
yeah, in the third quarter this year? Can you tell us about
we have
the
not. You
fundamental?
see, we have
Yes.
not received the output numbers as yet. But in the first half, you already have our results, so I will not dwell on them. Quarter 3 and quarter 4 should be much higher on revenue. So we expect quarter 3 to be superior to quarter 2, and we expect quarter 4 to be even more superior, because one thing to remember is the coal price. The coal price has remained high, and for us to realize the benefit of the coal price, it usually takes 1 quarter. There is a lag of 1 quarter. So quarter 3 should be far better than quarter 2, and quarter 4 should be far better than quarter 3. The only factor that can affect us is the output factor, and that depends on the rain. The La Nina rain effect continues to affect us. Some of our mines were flooded as well in quarter 3. So we are trying to do our best during the drier stretches. And we are hoping that October, November, December might be drier months. In which case, if we have done 34, 35 million tons in the first half, maybe we can do about 40 or maybe 42 million tons in the second half. But the price should be round about, the full year average should be more than double of last year. And the price we have guided for the full year is around $120 to $125. But please remember that we are the largest supplier to PLN. So we also supply at the subsidized price of $70 per ton on the benchmark. And for that kind of coal, we only get $40 or $45 per ton, so that depresses our ASP. But if you look at our export prices, they are very high. So our challenge is the rain. And if we can get the output up, actually it can make a difference of $1 billion higher revenue in a year. So you can say that in a way we have lost $1 billion of revenue, but yet we should increase our profits significantly in spite of the DMO and the subsidized price. So I would say bear with us. Our effort is to do our best in the current rainy condition. And unfortunately, we are giving priority to DMO, and we have export backlogs against existing contracts that we are supplying. And once we are more comfortable with the output, we can look at new markets in Europe and others.
It is really interesting, Mr. Dilip, about the numbers that you are telling us. But can you explain us or elaborate to us more about the DMO effect to Bumi?
See, I'll tell you.
Large effect. Yeah.
If you look at the full year 2022, and let us assume that we produce 75 million tons, 1/4 of that quantity goes to PLN. Now, 75 divided by 4 is about 18 million tons, maybe 19 million tons. Now, that 19 million tons is at $45 per ton. Whereas the rest of what we do, depending on the quality, can range between $120 to $200 to $250. Therefore, the average comes down to the level that I mentioned. But if you look at last year, we got $56 as the average price for the year, adjusted for quality and for PLN. This year, we should be more than double of that. We should be around about 120, 125. If we had normal volume, we could have got an extra turnover of $1 billion. But when you're looking at revenue last year, we got $5.4 billion of revenue. This year, we are looking at a revenue of between $9 billion to $9.5 billion. You can multiply 75 by 120 or 125. You can get that number.
Okay.
Number two, you have to also remember when you talk performance, the royalty rates only for Bumi have gone up this year. So from 13.5% royalty last year, because we got IUPK for Arutmin and KPC from January, the new rates have become leviable from January. So 13.5% has gone up to 14% for domestic. And for exports, it has gone up to 28%. So you can say that on an average, our royalty from 13.5% has gone up to 24, 25%. And that's an extra 10% of our revenue, like I mentioned, can be an extra 800 million to $1 billion. So we lose 1 billion on revenue because of rain. We pay more royalty to the extent of 800 to $1 billion. And we also subsidize PLN by about $80 per ton. You can do that on 20 million tons. Otherwise, our profit would be $3 billion higher. And 50% of that would be Bumi. So our profit should be 1.5 billion more. So we are subsidizing PLN. We are giving the country the national priority it deserves. And we are the major contributor to the national economy. We are the largest royalty payer. We are amongst the top 31 national taxpayers. And we are recognized for being one of the highest foreign exchange earners. What is our constraint? Nobody likes coal anymore internationally, and we cannot get funding for new coal projects. You've already seen that in the case of one or two other coal companies. Now, we somehow have to manage ourselves. We somehow have to produce more cash, improve operations, and invest in non-coal diversification projects. So when you talk about the new investor who's come in, actually, it's not really a new investor. It's actually the controlling shareholder who's got an affiliate. And there are a lot of rumors about who that affiliate is, but I'm not at liberty to disclose that right now. But suffice it to say that if we had Tata Power in 2007, and if we had CIC in 2009, and if we even tried to play around with Rothschild in 2012, I think the controlling shareholder would have a very credible investor in mind who's seeing the potential in Bumi from a Bakri viewpoint. So it can only be a mutually reciprocal, mutually beneficial partnership.
Yes, Mr. Dilip, this is really, really interesting. The market is asking about that and really, really curious about it.
They need not wait too long. I think let the ECM be over.
Okay. So about that, how is the progress of the acquisition or the progress of the uh, investors and that we call like acquisition, right, Mr. Dilip?
It's acquisition of what? Not really. You
Mm-hmm.
see, Bhumi tried to do a refinancing and a restructuring of its debt.
Mm-hmm.
But since it is impossible to get funding for coal companies, we had no choice. Either we restructure and extend the tenor of the loan, which was subject to lenders agreeing. The only other option available to us was to somehow repay the debt quickly and before the default date. The default date for the debt was 11th of December of this year. And when we had the controlling shareholder come in, along with an investor affiliate, who were willing to put in that money to repay our debt and become debt-free, we thought that this is the best opportunity for the company in the current climate, where the sentiment is against coal and everything is actually moving towards green. We thought that this is the best opportunity for us to clear out all our books, become as close to debt-free as we can, cut interest costs by about $100 or $200 million a year, which can add to profit, and take advantage of the current buoyancy in the coal price. And if the rains become less, I think we can produce more.
Okay.
And that can
So
become our cash cow. Coal can be our cash cow, and the money that we get from there can be invested into non-coal diversification projects.
okay. So
Yeah.
I want to my last question is about the private placement. So yeah, as I
It's not a
previously,
private placement, it's a non-preemptive issue
yeah,
without rights.
non-preemptive, right?
Now, if you look at the regulation, there are
Mm-hmm.
two types of regulations on non-preemptive issue without rights. One is up to a 10% of subscribed capital, where you have a price which is set, which is 90% of the
Mm-hmm.
previous 60 days volume weighted average. Now, that does not apply in our case, because the other regulation applies that we are doing it to improve our financial condition. So for that, there is no limitation on the size of the non-preemptive issue. And the price has to be with a willing buyer and a willing seller. And that has to be based on a fair value. Now, fair value is rather difficult to define. But if you go back 5 years and you do a volume weighted average for 5 years, it is well below 100. 4 years is well below 100. 3 years is well below 100. 2 years is well below 100. 1 year is well below 100. Year to date is around 100. But if you look at the last 1 month or 2 months, it may be 120, 130, 140. And then, of course, there's an independent valuation that is done to determine the price. And I'm sure the investor and the controlling shareholder must have done that. But it is still 50% higher than the OWK conversion price of 80 rupiah.
Okay.
You all are analysts, so you can do your arithmetic for 5 years,
Sure.
4 years, 3 years.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
I
So about that, Andreas will ask more questions to you, Mr. Dilip. A lot of curiosity
Lots of
here.
questions, sir. Long time no see, Pak. Pak Dilip, thank you so much for coming, Pak. I have several questions, of course, that I brought today. So regarding the, I would say, what's so-called a roadmap for Bumi to become a zero debt company. So why, Pak? Why do you want to be a zero debt company, and why it has to be now?
Can you name me one bank which is willing to lend to the coal sector?
It's very hard, Pak, to name you a bank that would lend.
So what should a company do?
something-
Should it retain the debt or repay the debt?
Of course, it's better to
If
repay the
somebody
debt.
is willing and sees potential and is willing to put in $1.6 billion to erase your debt, and then sees potential in the existing business, because we are not growing that business. We are trying to make that business more efficient without interest and cost reductions, and then invest into the greener areas, which is what is the international and national priority. We think that is about the best way we can go, because there is no other option available to us. And as I mentioned earlier, that if we do not do this before the 11th of December, we run into a default, and which is not good for any stakeholder, whether it is the lender or whether it is the shareholder. Definitely not for the people. So we are protecting the shareholder interest, we are protecting our stakeholder interests, and we are grateful to the controlling shareholder to get us another opportunity to revive ourselves, to rejuvenate ourselves, and to become the kind of company with the vision that we have planned for the next 10, 20 years.
Okay.
And I think there was another question about the roadmap. Let me tell you that we have employed the services of Boston Consultancy Group, and they're working on a 10-year program for us on our strategic direction and identification of projects. And we are looking also at preparing an energy transition plan between now and 2050 to move on to the greener areas.
Okay. I'll probably translate it to bahasa tuh for our audiences ya, Pak. So ini benar-benar bagus banget. Nah, jadi kita udah tahu kalau misalnya sebentar lagi kan akan ada RUPS juga untuk menyetujui non-preemptive rights issue-nya Bumi, dan plan mereka tentu setelah bayar utang ini juga mereka udah siapin roadmap yang cukup panjang banget sampai 2025 tadi ya, bersama konsultan dari BCG juga. Jadi benar-benar ini kita sembari membayar utang buat tentunya membuat perusahaan semakin efektif juga, dan nanti ke depannya masih ada nih plan-plan ke depannya buat 2005. Could you probably give us a bit color, sir, about your plans going forward? Probably you would like to seek an investment in a non-coal asset, or probably ramp up your productions from the operating KPC and Arutmin?
See, there are three areas that we would focus on. As I mentioned before, the coal business will remain our cash cow. So we've got to make it as efficient as we can. But we are not investing in new capacity. So essentially, our effort will be to reduce cost, to improve the quality of the coal so we can get a higher price, and keep the DMO, keep the government supplied with coal, and to export as much as we can. And if the weather is good, maybe we can do even more. So the profitability angle we want to sustain and improve from our existing business. The second one is we are invested into two companies. One is in the metal space, which is BRMS, which has already announced its plans on gold, and they plan to get into zinc as well in Delhi. We think that offers us potential. So for our 20% stake, it is already worth about, maybe $500 million or $600 million to us, but it is still undervalued. We think that that is not mentioned, or that is not included in the valuation of our shares by the market. I think there's a potential there. Then we also have a 23% stake in Dharma Henva, which is a mining operator. They are currently in coal, but they're also planning other businesses as well, in metals and others. We are hoping to make them more efficient. After all, they are dependent more or less on our business. But we think that they can diversify, and we can start getting contributions from them as well over the next 2-3 years. The third one is that at KPC, we have already announced a coal downstream project into methanol. Now, it could be with an international partner. It is on a build, own, operate basis. And the transfer angle we can look at later, nearer the time of commissioning. So it will be project funded. And at this point of time, our equity in the project is really supply of coal. And once the project is nearing completion, then we can take a more informed view on what kind of investment position we can take in that apart from just supplying coal. A similar project is planned for Arutmin, where it is undergoing feasibility studies. Now, in KPC and Arutmin, now they have large tracts of land where we also reclaim land. So not only are we replanting and reclaiming and regreening, we are also looking at the possibility of putting up solar panels there to generate power for ourselves. And maybe at a later stage offer hybrid power consisting of solar as well as what we produce for our captive purposes, and offering them to PLN on the grid and making that a revenue opportunity. We are also in dialogue with overseas parties with regard to solar. Whether we can put up farms or whether we can, work in collaboration with them for a larger quantity of renewable power that we can make. The other options we are examining are blue and green energy projects. If it's blue, we can utilize some of our coal, whether it's hydrogen, whether it's ammonia or that kind of thing. We are looking at the feasibility and the rates of return. And the other one that we could be looking at, we are already in the metal space in BRMS. We could be looking at another project in the minerals and the metals area. And all these investments would require power. And maybe we can use some of our coal for the power plants, and present our green credentials through the new products that we will be making. Now that's what our plan is, and that's where BCG is helping us with regard to identifying projects, working out the feasibility, etc. The biggest challenge, as you know, really is regulation. I'm not saying it's a challenge, but definitely it needs definition. Now, if you look at any renewable project across the world, there's always some incentive given by governments, to promote it. So if the policy on incentivizing, whether it is coal downstream projects, whether it is other green projects, whether it is solar and others, if that gets more clearly defined, then I think we can also work on more attractive internal rates of returns where we can attract investors and partners, and also be able to project it as an earning proposition for people to invest in. So our attention actually is going in all these areas. And as you know, the Bakri family is the controlling shareholder now with a very strong affiliate. Now, the president director is Aga Bakri. He is the eldest son of Mr. Nirwan Bakri. And we have a commissioner who's Andhra Bakri, who's the second son of Mr. Bakri. And you know that Anand is already in BNBR, and they already have green credentials, and they're going for electric vehicles and going for projects in that direction. So at a group level, we are combining synergy to see what best we can do to upgrade ourselves in the green space. And if the family is involved here and making the company relatively debt light or debt free, basically, I think the signal we are giving is that the company has some major plans in the offing. And they would like to leave a legacy for the next generation. So we are trying to build a future for Bumi. We are trying to develop our vision. We are defining and implementing our mission statement. And to move where we want to be in 2050 in two stages. One is in 10 years, and then what do we do after the next 10 or 20 years? So it will also give us time to assess what is the policy available on incentivization, what, certainty on government regulation. And it will also let us know what is happening on the Russia-Ukraine situation, whether China and Taiwan will become an issue, whether China and US will become an issue, whether India-Pakistan will become an issue, whether India-China will become an issue. Now, it'll give us some time to reflect on where the global economy is heading. Because right now, energy transition is taking a backseat to energy security. Everyone is looking for energy security first before looking at energy transition. What we are doing is both. And as Indonesia has a lot of coal, so they're pretty secure on coal. They produce 600, but they consume 150 and they export 450. Now that 450 is available to the government for use domestically. And what the government is doing is it is incentivizing value addition projects, whether it is in the CPO space, whether it is in the metal space, whether it is in the nickel space, whether it is in the copper and gold space. So that is also what we want to do. We want to get into value-added projects where we can burn coal cleaner, maybe even looking at the feasibility of carbon capture, utilization, and storage, or maybe looking at ways on how you can capture carbon cheaper. And we are examining qualities like that because we think it is very important for Indonesia to prolong the life of coal, because that is the only resource that the country has. It does not have enough oil. It does not have enough gas. So our coal downstream projects are really to help the nation to reduce their dependence on imported oil, because from methanol, you can get into diesel. And from DME, which PTBA is doing, you can get into LPG. So it reduces your dependence on imported fuels. And that is what the nation needs. So we hope that that would get recognized and there could be incentivization on that as well. That will be key to accelerating this. But for the present, in the next 2, 3, 4 years, it will be coal downstreaming. Hopefully they can come up in 2025 and 26. And in the interim, we want to strengthen our coal business and earn as much as we can out of it. Reducing costs, reducing our dependence on fuels. We are looking at electrification of our diesel equipment. We are looking at biofuels as a partial substitute for diesel. Now, all those things that we are looking at. Sorry, you had a question.
Yep. Yeah, I heard that you mentioned BRMS and Thermahenwa. So is it safe to assume that we will be seeing more surprises coming from both BRMS and Dewa?
You see, surprises can be pleasant and unpleasant. Now, which one do you have in mind?
What I have in mind.
The pleasant one.
Yes.
The pleasant one, Pak Dilip.
All right.
Of course, the pleasant one.
Look, I can't speak for BRMS because, they are a subsidiary and they have an independent management. And they are pretty visible on their plans. So if we just look at their assets and their future plans, I think there's definitely a pleasant upside potential there. Thermahenwa has a lot more of challenges with regard to equipment and with regard to the conditions. So that might take a little longer. But I would say that I would lay my bets more on BRMS and over the medium term on Thermahenwa.
Okay.
But definitely, if I was you, I would lay bets on Bumi as well.
Okay. Oh ya, ini menarik banget.
But I'm not
Jadi
promoting
benar-benar.
Bumi. I'm not promoting Bumi. Basically, I'm giving the story that if you think that this is something that is worth investing, it is your call. But then you also have 600 other stocks to choose from. So.
Of course, Pak Dilip.
Wah, benar-benar menarik banget ya Nil. Jadi penjelasannya Pak Dilip tadi. Jadi bukan cuman coal, tapi ternyata akan fokus juga ke investment lain, bahkan green investment ya. Dan tadi Pak Dilip juga sempat mention ke kita soal BRMS dan Dewa. Wah, ini worth to watch nih mungkin ya Nil ke depannya.
Iya. Karena tadi juga di-mention itu ya, coal downstream ya ke depannya ya.
Iya.
Silakan.
Pak Dilip, Well, it seems like you are trying to move away from coal, but
No, we
back
are
in
not moving
2003.
away from coal. We are not investing in capacity in coal. But
Okay.
our organic capability from KPC, our mean is 90 million tons. This year, we may produce 75 million tons. So we would like to bring the efficiency back to around 90. And Pendopo, we are looking at mine mouth projects which are clean and green. That may have some potential also to add to coal. But we are not divesting, if that's the question you're asking.
Yeah. Okay. If you're not divesting, probably, do you see going forward? Do you see you will, increase your ownership in KPC, because currently you have like around 51% of KPC, and if you can consolidate KPC, probably it could be better for Bumi, and you can be, of course, more effective, sir. What do you see going forward?
Let me tell you about KPC. Now, KPC's capacity is 60 or 65 million tons. The average price today, from if you look even at DMO and export, let us say KPC is around $140, $150 per ton. So on a 100% basis, the potential in KPC is $9 billion of revenue. So when you're looking at EBITDA, if you break it down, 24% royalty from 9 billion, and then you take your production cash cost at $45, $46, and you take that off, and you take 6 or 7% off for your G&A and operating expenses and marketing expenses, you can pretty much get EBITDA. Now that EBITDA can be in the region of about $3 billion, if not more, maybe 3.5. At this point of time, our ownership is 51%. So we are, you can say, reasonably happy with our 50%, simply because it has allowed us to grow with very strong partners. And we've been able to attract very strong partners. And even if we have a new affiliate and a new strategic partner, is largely because of the strength of our coal assets. So it's always a good idea, to share the sunshine, so to say, and not just keep it for yourselves. But yes, when it comes to KPC, KPC is owned 51% by us. 30% is owned by Tata Power. And 19% is owned by CIC. All of them view this as a very valuable project. Now, in the event that any one of the partners are willing to offload or to divest, now that's an option that could be made available to us, because under the agreement, they have to sell only to us as the first option. But I don't see signs of that right now, because right now, even though fossil fuels are considered dirty, they're actually making the maximum money out of any sector in the world. So even funds which were denying funding in the US to for coal investments, people like Vanguard have also done an about turn, and they said we owe a fiduciary duty to our clients to generate profits for them. So we cannot ignore coal, we cannot ignore fossil fuels. For the moment, they have gone back to investing in these areas. And we are hoping that local banks, which have already denied funding for coal, can actually take a lesson from this and actually start looking at it more empathetically.
Okay. Probably one last question.
I mean, if the opportunity is there, we will take it. But at this point of time, it's very difficult to be precise about it or to be definite about it.
Yeah.
Because by taking in partners, it gives you the opportunity to multiply your growth and investment and value, rather than just do it yourself.
Okay. probably last question from my side. So from what you said before, all I can see is all about massive investments going forward, and to do these massive investments, do you need to do some fundraising in the future, or will you be able to just do the investments from your generated cash flow?
See, we'll have to look at it project by project. It is not something where one can make a blanket statement. The first question is that yes, we will have cash available to us, assuming that the 11th of October event is successful and everything is approved and passed, and okay. Well, that's going to be available to us, and we are not investing, as I said, in coal capacity. We will only do sustenance and maintenance, which is maybe about $50 million a year or $60 million a year will be our capex. We don't really need very much more of equipment or balancing what you call capex. Equipment, yes, you might need to renew a bit, but it's not going to be significant. In any case, we will get lease money for that from the people who supply the equipment. And we've been their clients for the last 30 years, so we don't see a problem there. Now, the second one is, if we are looking at, let's say, the coal downstream project, the way it operates is that it will be project funded, which means that there will be an overseas technology supplier. The technology supplier is going to put up the money and to put up the plant. Our equity at this point of time is supply of coal. And then we will get involved in the marketing of the finished product. And at that stage, when it is nearing completion, we can take a view on whether we should have a larger investment position or not. And that's the kind of philosophy that we will extend to Arutmin, and let us see what we do for the smelter and the other things that we are looking at. You see, for that, the challenge again is that if you are looking at projects which are very power heavy, they require a lot of power, then you need to put up a coal-fired power plant. It's very difficult to find funding for it. Now, when we've been talking to investors, and we were recently in London at the JP Morgan Forum, we asked investors very specifically that, listen, here are our green plans. But even for our green plans, we need to put up coal-fired power projects. Does your fund allow you to invest in coal? If they don't allow you to invest in coal, why are we wasting our time? You go home, I go home, right? Now, we found that the Europeans appeared to be pretty strong that they will not invest. But when we talked to the Americans, they said, yes, we can consider that investment. We are not banned as yet. So we'll have to be careful on who we pick upon, to do the funding. Now, the local banks are getting shy. Singapore is getting shy. Japan is getting shy. China is not shy. India is not particularly shy. US is not particularly shy. They are still producing coal. I think they're producing 700 million tons of coal. About 5 years earlier, they were doing 800 or 900, but they're getting back to coal. Europe is getting back to coal, even though they've said that we don't want to use coal. So we feel that there could be some flexibility in funding requirements. And I'm not very sure whether the investment required will be pure loans. I think our equity stake will need to be considered. I don't think we are looking at 100% equity stake or a full project cost. We will bring in strategic partners. We've enjoyed our experience with CIC and Tata Power in KPC. And even for the coal downstream projects, our only equity is supply of coal. So we can begin with that. So we can take smaller positions and scale up, as the project becomes more and more promising and nearing commercialization. So we will not be taking what is called a $5 billion loan up front. I think we'll be doing it in very small dollops.
Really interesting, Pak Dilip. But
You
unfortunately,
see,
our
one
time is
thing you
up.
must remember,
Yeah. Yes.
that we are
Sure.
not
Sure.
interested in only making a statement for purposes of positioning. We have noticed that in the green space, there are many companies who are making statements.
Yes.
But when we ask them, like when people say we are doing it, how much is your rate of return? What are you
Mm,
promising your investors?
mhm.
What kind of dividend or profit do you think you can get out of it? There is actually not much of an answer. They seem to be more as a positioning exercise in line with priorities that the funders are asking for a green transition plan, so they're giving the green transition plan. They're announcing an exit from coal synthetically, or they're announcing EVs and other things which are untested right now, getting into batteries and all. So we've opted not to do all that ourselves. We've opted that let other parts of the Barclay group do all that. So we can ride on their green credentials. And we will do what suits Bhumi best and gets us the right return. And we will announce these projects once we are certain about these projects. We don't want to do kite flying in the air.
Okay, Pak Dilip, it is really, really interesting. We got a lot of insight from you just in 45 minutes. Unfortunately, our time is up, but we have a great pleasure to talk to you today. Many thanks for your insight, Pak Dilip. I hope we can talk again more soon in another event. Thank you very much, Pak Dilip. See you
You're
soon in
most
another
welcome,
event.
Pa, and I'm very happy that I was able to talk to you all and your community. And maybe one day you might consider Bhumi worthy of being covered.
Yes,
And
Of course.
we look forward to proxies from your clients for our extraordinary general meeting on the 11th of October.
sure. Looking forward for that meeting, Pak Dilip. Thank you very much for your time today.
Most
Thank you
welcome.
so. Thank you very much, sir.
See you again in another
Thank you very
event, Pak
much.
Dilip. Thank you very much.
Okay,
Thank you
take
very much,
care.
sir. I hope the
Have a good weekend.
have a good weekend, sir.
Thank you. Now,
Oke, dan itu dia tadi ya perbincangan kita dengan Pak Dilip. Kita dapat banyak, lumayan, bukan lumayan banyak lagi. Ini mah banyak banget ya kita dapat data ya kurang lebih ya. Bro Andreas, semoga bisa jadi masukan ya untuk para cuan troopers dan juga untuk cuan troopers tadi yang mau dengerin ulang lagi ya terkait dengan data-data yang sudah disampaikan oleh Pak Dilip, bisa langsung buka Instagram Sukor Sekuritas karena IG live kita hari ini akan kita save. Dan tadi saya juga mau mengingatkan kembali, ini bukan ajakan untuk membeli karena keputusan membeli itu ada di tangan para cuan troopers sekalian. Begitu ya. Disclaimer on ya, cuan troopers. Oke, saya Daniel Wiguna dan tadi juga mewakili tim riset kita, Andreas Jordan, pamit undur diri. Sampai jumpa di CEO Talks lainnya. Bye-bye.